Looks
It
like
looks
we're
like we're good to
streaming.
start.
All good, Kaylin?
Yes.
Okay, great. Welcome to our Thursday, June 27th, 2024, 5 p.m. meeting. Call to order, moved by Deputy Mayor Lang, seconded by Councillor Jaworski. Be it resolved that the June 27th, 2024 special meeting of the Township of South Glengarry now be opened at 5:03 p.m. All those in favor? Carried. Approval of the agenda. Are there any amendments? Seeing none, moved by Councillor McDonnell, seconded by Councillor Bougie. Or Councillor Bougie will be with us in a second, so I'll just move that to Councillor Jaworski if that's okay. Seconded by Councillor Jaworski. Be it resolved that the Council of the Township of South Glengarry approve the agenda as presented. All those in favor? Carried. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? Seeing none, we'll go into, I don't think there's an approval of the minutes for this particular meeting, though they will come at our next meeting. We'll go into presentations and delegations. Oh, Councillor Bougie, I think I had asked you, or asked just before, you don't have a declaration of pecuniary interest? Great. So we'll get to presentations. 5A, Asset Management Plan presentation. Ms. McDonald.
Thank you, and Council, I'm just going to share my screen. Thank you. I saw the thumbs up, Mr. Mayor. Excellent. So we are here today to talk about our Asset Management Plan version 2.0, and I'll just get right into it since I know other people have prior engagements this evening. A quick refresher, we have our asset management policy. It was created in 2019 and we reviewed it in 2022. I just wanted to highlight that the bottom paragraph that the policy demonstrates an organization-wide commitment to the good stewardship of our municipal assets, and it allows us to be accountable and transparent to the community through the adoption of best practices regarding asset management planning. Hang on, there's some things on my screen. I'm also not used to Zoom. All right. So a refresher on why we have this policy and why we've embarked on this multi-year journey towards asset management planning. It's the Ontario Regulation 588/17, and we've already met the first two deadlines. So the policy in 2019 and our core asset management plan in 2022. 2024, we've included our non-core assets. So core assets being our bridges, roads, water, wastewater, and stormwater, and non-core was less defined by the province through the regulation, but we have, as administration, have chosen to define it as fleet facilities, wharfs, trails, and parks, which is in line with what we've seen in other asset management plans, and it kind of fits with how we talk about different, both assets and like functional operational areas. So we are moving towards that, and in 2024, so right now, we are only doing inventory and current level of service, so desired level of service and like what we want to see and want to strive for will be in 2025. So that's proposed levels or desired levels of service. Right now, important is the inventory and the current level of service being provided, and that current level of service is like we didn't make that up. It's defined, and you'll see it's defined through condition assessments and very factual types of ways. On this particular asset management plan, we've opted to split the assets into tax funded versus rate funded. We felt that that would reflect how things are well funded, but it will help us frame that discussion in the future. So when we talk about capital planning for instance, roads and bridges, that's tax funded, where when we get into our water tower, it's rate funded, and it helps finance and ourselves look at things and have a comprehensive discussion in the future. So getting into some of the fun stuff, we looked at our tax funded assets, and this is it's always a living document. An asset management plan is always living because we're always discovering new assets or updating the values because the cost of things change. We're inventorying more items, but as of today, our inventoried assets are $242,266,710. That's their current replacement value. And again, tax funded, so roads, bridges, storm, fleet facilities, wharfs, trails, and parks. I'll note that this is absolutely understated, and we know that as administration, so that roads values are from 2020. We pulled them from the roads need study. We're in the process of undertaking our 2024 road need study and hope that we'd have that information for this document, but we don't, so we will likely need a version 2.1 to update it and make that number grow. And our parks also no, not parks, sorry, trails is understated since we're still bringing in our culvert values. That's been a bit more of a challenge than we'd originally thought. But right now that trails value is only the structures, meaning reviewed by OSIM, so 3 meter span or more. On our rate funded side, we have water, wastewater. So we have $88 million or $89 million worth of assets supporting our 3 wastewater systems and our 3 water systems, which is substantial. And altogether, our asset value is $331,251,658. And I had to write that down because that's a really big number in actual words and not just numbers. So in terms of what we own, that is the value of what we own as we know it. However, we know that there are gaps in that information, and we'll continue to gather data and provide council with the most comprehensive information that we can as we continue our asset management journey. So our asset management plan, the document, is split into a number of sections. That the bulk of it is in the asset area, I suppose. And again, tax funded versus rate funded. So our tax funded assets, and as defined by the regulation, we talk about levels of service in terms of community level of service and technical level of service, where community level of service was defined as how customers expect to receive a service. And for our core assets, so bridges, roads, water, wastewater, that was defined for us through the regulation. So we didn't have a lot to think about. For the non-core assets, it was less defined. So how community levels of service are presented are kind of best practices and pulled from a number of different other asset management plans and municipalities of our sizes. And then the technical level of service would be measurable and reflects the asset's ability to meet that desired level of service. One of the things that we've been advised to do by everybody in the game is kind of keep it simple, so that the more in-depth these community and technical levels of service get, the more we have to track and report on, and it just is more overhead for the township. So again, if council sees something that they'd like more or less of, it's certainly open for discussion, but we've aimed to keep it in line with the regulation and kind of something that we feel is a manageable way of reporting moving forward. Council will remember in the middle of May, we did our annual update on the asset management plan. So just the amount of work that would go into preparing that document annually is something to keep in the back of your mind, or in the back of all of our minds, I suppose. So our first asset class is roads. So we have 385 kilometers of roads and valued, including sidewalks and streetlights, valued at $91 million. So that's quite big. And that again is 2020 values. So I'm expecting that when we blow that up to 22 and 24 values, we'll see an increase in our replacement value. Our community and technical levels of service as the definitions haven't changed since our 2022 asset management plan, and again, pulled right from the reg. And we had talked about some of the changes that we've seen between 2022 and 2024 through our update, but the current level of service is as we see it in our last condition assessment. So roads, no really big changes from the last iteration of the asset management plan. When we look at bridges, we have updated these values to include the information from our 2023 OSIM report, so our Ontario Structural Inspection Manual inspections, where we did run a full inspection on all 61 road bridge assets. So in this, we've pulled our trail bridges out and thrown them into the trail section. And that was kind of a decision we made just so we could understand trails more fulsomely instead of putting bridges here and then not seeing them in like the trails numbers. So that is one thing to keep in mind. This is our 61 road bridges. The changes from the last time that council approved this asset management plan is the current level of service. We now have one road bridge closed to all vehicle traffic, that's Kinloch Road. And our technical level of service, that bridge condition index, it was previously good and now it's dropped down to fair. So that is just reflected in our aging infrastructure. There's no other really way to describe that. And that's the truth. So new to this asset management plan is our stormwater. So we had this inventoried this year, and our replacement values, that says 2022, but that's the 2024 replacement cost. So $1.88 million of stormwater, and that's our pipes and our manholes and our basins and our culverts that connect into those proper storm systems. I know I talk about this a lot, but there's more of an emphasis provincially on stormwater management, and we will be pulling in a new asset in the coming months, I would say. So we'll be adding in a stormwater pond to this this collection of assets, and that would be from Place Saint Laurent. And this one again, core asset, so its level of services were defined by the OREG. And it's pretty. We have no reliable data available. We worked with planning and looked at people around us for the percentage of properties resilient to a 100-year storm, and that's incredibly awkward for us to determine. So something that we'll work on pulling together, but unlikely to be this year. We also have our tax-funded fleet, so this will be new to council to see it all in one spot. And again, water, wastewater, their fleet assets are pulled out of this, and they're over in the rate-funded bit. So in the tax-funded fleet, we have 45 vehicles. We have a remaining service life of 8.75 years and a total replacement value for a tax-funded fleet of $13.5 million, which is actually more than I thought it would be. And in the back of the report, there's a table outlining like which vehicle, it's Appendix C, which vehicle comes up for renewal and when. Really important under this one, under fleet, is that this is our fleet that has not been replaced. So we have 4 vehicles that are still in service, but have formally been replaced. So replacing them would be growth to the township. So this particular one, well, actually all of our tax-funded assets represent our, what did I call it? Like not our growth, but just to maintain the current level of service. So that's a whole other conversation in terms of what happens with those 3 to 4 vehicles that are in service that people may be used to using. That would be like, it'd be growth to replace them because council's already authorized their replacement. And that seems like a weird distinction, but in terms of how asset planning works, it's just how it is. Let me see. One thing to note is that the replacement value for a fleet is very much age-based. So in some places we know that our asset will exceed its life expectancy. And should that happen, like we will adjust the asset management plan. The asset management plan in this case is really just to make sure that we have sustainable, or to suggest sustainable funding over time. And if, let's say, a fire truck or a pickup can make a few more years because it's been very well maintained beyond the expected service life, we would absolutely push it, and then we just have a little bit more in reserves for the future. Facilities is another big one. Ms. Servage, our General Manager of Parks, Recreation and Culture, presented our building condition assessments earlier this year. And this is a really quick summary of that very intensive process. Again, water, wastewater facilities are over in the rate funded side. But we have 31 facilities with a current replacement value of almost $50 million. And I opted to include site works. So that's like the works to the ground around it, because when we get into paving things, it gets really expensive, and we felt that that should be included in our asset management plan instead of just the facility proper. Our facilities are in fairly good shape. That 5-year facility condition index, so that green line, says that the average FCI of our buildings in tax-funded facilities is 10.3%, and that is very good. And right now we don't have a backlog, but at the end of this year, we absolutely will have a backlog. In the back of the appendix, or the report, again, Appendix C, there's a $825,000 line item for 2024 for facilities. So, I mean, again, that's a suggestion for what we could do. And then at the end of 2024, we'll move that value into our backlog. So at the end of this year, we'll have like an $800,000 backlog in our facilities. And that is just one way that we can kind of measure where we are and where we're choosing to spend our money. And there's really no right answer to that. And the asset management plan just helps us frame the discussion and see how things are going. So it's not like a plan for the future. It's simply helping us track how we're doing moving along and where we might need to make some future decisions. And when I say we, I mean you, council. So we are looking at our wharves now. We have 2 wharves, and so one in South Lancaster and one in Somerstown. The estimated replacement value is in excess of $3 million. We do have a direction that we received in 2023 to look at disposing of one of the wharves in an as-is, where-is condition, and we're still working on that. So I haven't forgotten it, but since it's still in our possession, it's included in this plan. And the wharves per our 2022 inspections have at this time now a 0 to 3 year life expectancy left on them. So that's a big one. And then we have our trails, and this is, I'd hope to have a more robust reporting to council for this, but we're still, like I said, working on our culvert inventory and pulling together all of the values. So trails would include the Glen Walter Park Trail around Glen Walter Park, so that the loop and the peanut line. The value that I threw in, the $7 million, is for the bridges only, and so this will balloon way higher once we have all that information together. And we took a crack at, this is new, again, technical level of service is completion of like the backlog, and then we haven't done a condition, we haven't done a condition assessment on it, but through the culvert assessment, we should get a good idea of what everything's looking at like. Right now, we have these bridges, they haven't been maintained on as frequently as our road bridges, so the bridge condition index is currently poor. We also have tax-funded parks. So and Ms. Servage helped, didn't help, she provided all this information for us. So if you have questions at the end, she'll be the one that is able to answer them. We inventoried our play structures, our pavilions, and our splash pads. And we selected the community level of service based on the draft classifications of parks found in our Parks and Recreation Master Plan. So these aren't new classification that we've defined. They've been seen by council before, and they seem pretty standard in what not everyone else, but what many municipalities are using for determining their levels of service for parks. And then we jump into our rate funded assets. So they're user pay, there are water, wastewater systems, and they're supported by our water bills. And we packaged them all together. So we have our water systems, and they have total asset value, or this is $40 million. They're doing fairly well. What did I want to say about these ones? Yeah, no, we're doing fairly well. We've improved on some of our boil water advisories past year. And, last time it was 2021, 2022 that we reported on. And that was when we had, I think, 3 or 4, and we've had just 1 recently, which is good. And you can notice that we've included our fleet and our facilities in our water. So they're not over in the tax funded, they're over here in the rate funded. So council can have an understanding of where our fleet is. And, there are 5 water facilities, which is often surprising to people, but more surprising maybe how many wastewater systems or wastewater facilities we have. We have 7 pump stations, which is driving up the replacement costs of our wastewater facilities, since like one mechanical system and 2 lagoons is not too bad. Now I had to split this into 3 slides because there was just a lot to talk about under wastewater. Not a lot to talk about, but a lot that the OREG wanted us to report on. So community level of service is really just describing how the systems work. It's pretty standard. And our technical level of service, again, we do fairly well here. We have nothing really red flaggy to present. And I'm doing good for time. So jumping into I think what the meat and the potatoes are, and it's a combination of the asset management plan. It's the annual financial requirements. And this is very much, we stack all of our spreadsheets together to find out how much, when we consider all of our asset classes, how much capital funding do we need to keep all of our assets in a state of good repair. And again, that state of good repair will be defined through the desired levels of service that we do in the future. So perhaps like on the bridge condition index, if we're happy with a 68 bridge condition index, or maybe perhaps something lower, like if 60 is our threshold, then our funding amounts would decrease. So that's part of the next conversation. But right now, just stacking everything on top and pie in the sky, if we wanted to keep everything in an excellent state of repair, every year we would need to expend $4.4 million through our taxes. And again, this will be understated because this is using an old roads capital plan. And I do expect that $500,000 for roads to pump up to closer to $1 million, and trails will also increase substantially, I would guess. So $5.4 million at the low end annually, kind of broken between these asset categories. Fun to see stormwater down here at 0 because it's all very new and we're not expecting it to hit end of life for another, I don't know, 30 years. And then that annual requirement is just an average of what we see here. So this is every year and it ebbs and it flows. For example, in 2029, you can see facilities is a big expenditure. And again, this is all of our capital plans on top of each other. And this graph, as we move forward and gather more information, we'll refine it. And then we'll be able to also layer on top of that, like where our funding actually is and where the gaps in our funding are and how we could close that. So right now, like just because it says tax funded, it doesn't mean it needs to be all tax funded. We can bring in other sources of funding, whether it be grants or debt to service whatever asset classes we think the council thinks should be served in a year. So this is kind of eye-opening, I find, and I know that the mayor has talked about having a graph sort of like this for a little bit. So this is our first, I guess, formal show to council. And as we, again, refine and collect more information on our inventory, we can improve this and give you more information, but it's a starting point. And then this slide is the capital funding for water. So I had mentioned that our tax funded, I'll just go back one. So tax funded is just to sustain what we have. There's no growth involved in this. It's just keeping our assets in a good state of repair. And for our rate funded, we did include the capital expansion. So it's not capital maintenance, it's a capital expansion. So that'd be growth driven. 2025 is the 2025 has the water tower and some of the wastewater plant. Yep, that's true. And 2030 has the water treatment plant expansion. I think there's some wastewater also in 2025. I wonder if that is correct. Yeah, that is wastewater. Oh, wastewater, water, and also water. My apologies. And I did an exercise that if I took out the capital expansion, how much that would be. And I didn't write it down, but I did average this one out. If we average out, I didn't average out the water and wastewater capital funding per year because it's very clearly spikes. But if you did under this model, it's $6.3 million per year. And if you take out the capital expansions, it's $1.3 million per year. So if you take out the expansions, we're looking at $1.3 million a year across the 10 years. Because even though if we don't expand our plants, then we need to do some substantial upgrades to the stuff inside of them. So it's like kind of, anyways, that's the reason behind that. So that is our water, wastewater 10-year capital funding requirement with the expansions. And as a final slide, I threw all the assets and just to show council where our value is, not our value, that's the wrong word. I keep saying assets, but it's where our assets are. So all our inventoried assets are $331 million. And super quick overview of the asset management plan. It really is just an inventory and a start on what level of service we currently have. And then we'll work towards filling in the gaps and getting the desired levels of service going for 2025. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Right, thank you. Just before getting started, we didn't have a resolution proposed, but if there is a wish for resolution after our discussion, we'd have two options. One would be to adopt the asset management plan, and the second one would be to defer.
Mr. Mayor, you've muted yourself.
I did mute myself, sorry. That's silly. Okay, so I was just saying that we can either adopt or defer. Option one will be to adopt and option two will be to defer. After this, I see Councillor Bougie's hand up electronically. Councillor Bougie.
Thank you, and through Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Ms. McDonald, for the presentation. I mean, so much work has been put into this, very well laid out, very detailed. I was actually quite surprised to see the number on the trails, almost $7 million. I was going to ask that, but I see you had bridges included in that. Is that still the case when we go to the average annual capital funding requirement? So you had trails at 195,100. Is that still including the bridges that need to be replaced on there?
just muted.
Thank you. Sorry, Council, he got lost behind other windows. Yes, well, it should.
Because I just noticed like there's a section for bridges, but trails also.
Mhm.
I mean,
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the trail bridges should be under trails. That number does seem low. And actually, how about I will just share my screen again so that I can hopefully circle. This is what you're talking about, Councillor Bouger,
yeah, that's the one.
that's the one, yeah.
Yeah.
So this should be, the bridges should be road bridges only, and then trails, since all I really had were trail bridges for the costs and for conditions, this would be the annual requirement for trail bridges that we have inventoried, but there are another 40 culverts that are still being processed.
Okay, thank you for the clarification.
Are there any questions? I was curious just if I can, I guess, maybe jump the queue. The roads amount seemed low compared to how much we already invest. I know you said that was 2020 numbers. They still seem a little bit low, and I'm not like, oftentimes we ask for information and we attack that information. So I will first say thank you very much for putting it together, because it gives us something to talk about. And so that number just seemed a little bit low to me. And I mean, that can be iteration 2.1 as well, as we refine the numbers better. So I'm not, it doesn't need to be changed. It just seemed low compared to our current investment, and potentially even with 2025 on the horizon. If we are looking to increase our level of service, I would imagine like that just seems a little low. Like I wouldn't want the public thinking $450,000 keeps our roads in current condition, because it's much more than that. Deputy Mayor Lang.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you. Yeah, I'm going to ask the same thing about the roads. So if I'm understanding right, then the roads number is only to for replacement or maintenance. It's not, it wouldn't include plowing, it wouldn't include grading or any of this stuff. Would that be correct? So the amount that we would spend, you know, on our salt and all of this stuff would be on top of that number.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that is correct. These are capital costs, so it doesn't include the annual operating cost. But I will just share my screen again. This is the Appendix C. Hopefully I've got the right window. Yeah, this is Appendix C of the report. And so the roads number is low because it is simply that 2022 capital plan. So it takes into that 10-year plan, and it is an average of the bottom sums. So as we get our roads need study and we see what it's saying about our existing assets, and as we have that discussion with council to see where we might want to expand, like a capital expansion, so an increase to that level of service, and we can really get into that roads number. And I really want to apologize to council for not having the road need study ready. Like, we embarked upon it with high hopes that it would be included in here and we could have that discussion. And I'm just as disappointed as you to not be having it tonight. But yeah, so it's back to Deputy Mayor Lang's question. It really is just taking that 2022 capital plan and averaging out the remaining 10 years. So it's not reflective, I think, of where council is hoping to go, but it will be in version 2.1.
Thank you. Can I ask another question, Mr. Mayor? Thank you.
Please proceed.
For the facilities, and you said that there's no backlog, but there will be as of next year. When you showed the graph, and I think it was in 2 years, whatever time, and there was quite a bit under facilities, is that what you're just accumulating that backlog and then you've put it in all in 1 year, or is that backlog just something that we would have to, because I'm not even sure if that would be realistic. Like, facilities are something that you can do a lot of things to, and you know, but sometimes you can stretch your, as long as it's not leaking, you can stretch the life of a roof a couple more years, and it, you know, it doesn't have to add up every year.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So the backlog doesn't accumulate over time once it is in a, and I'm going to share my screen again since it's a bit easier. So this is the facilities capital plan, and it was part of the appendix provided by the building condition assessment folks. So the $825,000 that I said would be backlog is because it was suggested to be done in 2024. You're absolutely right, Deputy Mayor Lang, that this is kind of the gold standard. And I believe that's what our acting CA often says. We don't always need to achieve the gold standard, or we could patch things together to keep them going. And that's a kind of a level of service discussion for what we want to provide. So no, the 825 doesn't then jump over into this 1.3 million. It's just becomes backlog. And that just provides council with an indication of what, well, it's just backlog. But
So-
in a few years, that jump is for the Shoreland Recreation Center.
Okay,
So there's a $1.6 million, and I don't know off the top of my head what that was for, but it jumps quite a bit because there's something required at the arena.
so would there be a way to readjust that backlog every once in a while? Like, you hate to see it just keep building it and maybe not making any sense after a few years. I
Oh.
just wonder if there's a way that, you know, every once in a while you go in and say, okay, let's reset and let's see what makes sense at this point.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, absolutely. And I think at the beginning I said our asset management plan is a living document, so we need to continually adjust it. And as we have more conversations about desired levels of service, then we will have like our premium asset management plan. I don't know, not premium, that's the wrong word, but the strict one, and then the one that would meet what we're able to provide. And that's a tough one to wrap your head around. Like there's the ideal and then the reality. And they may be two different things.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
And that's a fair comment, because the ideal one might shape our future conversations, and that, you know, we're here, we know we're here, how can we get there? And then just on that, we're always being resourceful with things. I know we had some discussion over the word innovative and resourceful, so I am keep in mind when we look at these big numbers, sometimes resourceful might be the right word. And I said a little tongue-in-cheek. Councillor Jaworski.
Thank you, through you, Mayor McDonald. First of all, thank you very much, Ms. McDonald, for the presentation and all the work that went together in compiling this, as well as to all the other members of staff who supported that effort. With respect to the mayor's question about accepting or deferring this document, I mean, as I understand it, you know, there's sort of legislative requirements as to when we need to accept it by, but also, I mean, and you did mention, Ms. McDonald, that this is an evergreen document. I'd like to better understand what are once this document is accepted, what are really the implications of that? Is there anything now that we are, I don't want to say forced to do? Is there anything here that we've 100% committed ourselves to now? Or is it really is sort of more of a reference document to help guide us versus something that directs us? Thanks.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that's an excellent question, and one that acting CEO Robertson and I had like an hour ago. It is like a frame. This is a framework or a guiding document for the township. It doesn't commit anybody to anything. It just provides us us as administration with a document that we can prepare our next capital budget with, and then council can massage that and look at it. Council can choose to do something completely different. It's just a way that we can plan for the future. And in my mind, it's a document that allows council to, in the long run, figure out how to fund and make tough decisions and prioritize between things. So it's a conversation piece, a very important conversation piece.
Okay. And if I may, Mr. Mayor, a supplemental, in terms, and I'm sorry if you've already said this, but if you could just repeat what are the requirements for the review of the document? Are there specific review points, sort of similar to what Deputy Mayor Lang was saying about the backlog? And is it like re-review? Is there a formal re-review at some point that would bring that backlog number potentially back to quote unquote reality? So yeah, I'm looking for what are the milestones or the timeposts that we need to think of going forward with the document?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, and that's a really big question, Councillor Jaworski. Through our strategic asset management policy, we have our one annual review, which we did in May, and that can be as big or as little of a discussion as council would wish. So at that time, I would say, like, you will have an annual discussion, and if at that time you say, hey, this backlog's looking a little crazy, we'd like you to take a closer look, even if it wasn't on our work schedule for that year. That would be one venue that council could could push us as administration along, but also coded into some of those technical level of services are our condition assessment timelines. So every time we would do a new condition assessment, so bridges, for instance, every 2 years, I don't remember off the top of my head facilities, but that would be another opportunity. So we'd have our updated condition assessments and we'd kind of refresh the document. So I think the condition assessments would eliminate the backlog, to be honest, because you'd have a fresh capital plan underpinning for that asset class. I think that answered all the questions.
Did I see Deputy Mayor Lang's hand go up there? I don't know if you were moving or.
Maybe I'm shuffling papers around here, but I would speak to whether we make a motion to accept this. I'm perfectly capable or happy to accept this just because the amount of work that's gone into it. I'm definitely not sending anybody back to the drawing board with this. I think it's as good a start as we're likely to get. And like you said, it's a living document, so it'll be changed as we go. And am I right in saying that there's a kind of a July 1st deadline to have this done, or was it just a deadline we put on ourselves?
I believe from my standpoint, it is July 1st. There are municipalities who will miss it, but we don't want to be among them because we are now, we made last one, we made the one in 2019. Might as well continue this tradition of being on time, but I don't think there's any punitive nature to those deadlines that should be missed them.
Well, I'd be happy to if you need it, to make a motion that we accept this report with thanks to staff for all their work.
Okay, I'll just put your name down here. Could I guess before we go to a seconder, okay. Councillor Jaworski. Is there any further wish to talk about the document? I don't know if Councillor McDonnell, you've been a little bit silent, but perhaps you've just been listening and your questions have been answered, but I'd hate to forget.
I did have a question, but it was answered by one of Councillor Jaworski, so I'm good for now.
Okay, thank you. If I can look towards the treasurer in tandem with this document, I would love if possible, and if it's too much to change for 2025 budget, it'd be wonderful to see what our current capital spending as well as our reserve transfers combined would equal in comparison to some of these charts, to give us that, very clear where we are, where we aspire to be, or maybe not even expire, because this is current level of service, what it costs to maintain what we have, and then 2025, I guess we get that future level of service where that's our aspiration, but we may or may not be funding at our current levels of service. So that would be a nice, clear thing to have. So if I can nudge you in that direction, I'd be glad to receive it. That being said, I did not see any other questions, so I will put the resolution to the floor. I'll just wait a second in case there's a lag. Nope. Okay. Moved by Deputy Mayor Lang, seconded by Councillor Jaworski. Be it resolved that the Asset Management Plan version 2.0 be received, and that the Council of the Township of South Glengarry choose option 1, adopt the Asset Management Plan version 2.0 in accordance with Ontario Regulation 58817. All those in favor? Excellent. So that's carried. I don't see Councillor Bougie on the screen, but
Yes, I'm in favor, Mr. Mayor.
carried.
Sorry.
Oh, thank you. All in favor then. All right, I'll just jump back to the agenda page. That is our only item for this meeting. I thank everybody for taking the moment to make our legislative requirement, as well as staff. As somebody said, it's not just General Manager of Infrastructure, it's everybody behind them and the reports, and glad to get this moving because it will inform our future decisions. So I'll go to the bylaw to adopt and confirm and ratify, moved by Councillor Jaworski, seconded by Councillor Bougie. Be it resolved that bylaw 2024-43, being a bylaw to adopt, confirm, and ratify matters dealt with by resolution, be read a first, second, and third time, passed, signed, and sealed in open council this 27th day of June in 2024. All those in favor? Carried. Which leaves us to our adjournment. Before adjourning, it is Canada Day this upcoming week. We'll have our council meeting on Tuesday following, so we moved to Tuesday. and I'll put a few people on the spot if they're so inclined. So I always like to ask people what they're grateful for Canada, and I will say we pick people down when they're up. If anybody has a moment where they want to forfeit something, I'll cede the floor to whoever. Otherwise, I will read the adjournment. I'll give about 20 seconds to make people, or 10 seconds to make people uncomfortable enough to come forward with what they're grateful for.
I'll make a comment or two, Mr. Mayor, if you don't mind. And I'd mentioned it during strategic planning. I do think we live in the best place in the world to live, and very happy. And I hope everybody enjoys their Canada Day weekend. I think there's going to be a few showers maybe on Saturday, but enjoy the weekend. Anyway, everybody, we will likely see people out and about at some events for sure.
Okay, that's enough of a pause for that matter. At Smithfield Park in Lancaster will be one of our celebrations. I believe the County Lads will be there. Hope to see everybody or anybody there. Moved by Deputy Mayor Lang, seconded by Councillor McDonnell. Be it resolved that the Council of the Township adjourn to the call of the Chair at 5:44 p.m. All those in favor?